स्वामी शैलेंद्र सरस्वती। मैं सबसे पहले स्पीकर के रूप में उनको आमंत्रित करता हूं एंड दिस इज माय प्राउड प्रिविलेज टू इंट्रोड्यूस Swami Shailendra Saraswati ji. Swami ji was born on 17th June 1955 as a younger brother of Osho in Gadarwada, MP. Just 2 days ago, we celebrated his birthday with fervor. At the tender age of 16, Swami Shailendra ji joined the new Sannyasa movement of Osho and moved to Gujarat for providing Osho's philosophy of life by distributing the handbills, etc. Thereafter, following master's guideline, as Osho, guided him to come back to Gadarwada and continue with his studies. And during 1978, he obtained the prestigious degree of MBBS. And then once again, he joined the Osho commune in Pune and shifted to Rajneeshpuram, Oregon, USA. He lived there till 1985. After that, he came back to India and served Orient Paper Mill as a chief medical officer. Swamiji, along with his wife, Ma Amrit Priya, have contributed in translating many books of Osho, having experienced the glimpses of eternal truth in April 1998. Swamiji started sharing it with the others also by conducting camps and workshops on meditation and self-realization in India as well as in several other countries. His discourses on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Tantra Sutra, Gita, Upanishad, they were telecast on Astha channel daily in the evening. Recently, he has taken a new path in the form of Osho fragrance, whereby the practices of all those techniques is being conducted, especially on which Osho had spoken, but still not readily available to masses. During the corona pandemic, Swamiji and Ma have geared up their drive of conducting meditation camps and knowledge sessions to thousands of seekers from across the world and tried to comfort the ailments of the general people. It is our proud privilege to listen to Swami Shailendra Saraswati today. He has kindly agreed to talk on heights of yoga. Swamiji, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alokji. I'm happy that you invited me to speak to the audience on this special occasion of International Yoga Day. My dear friends, if we want to make yoga really international, really global, then we have to be ready to drop few things. If we are keeping those bondages, then it will remain local. It cannot become global. If somebody says that electricity was discovered by a Christian and it is Christian electricity, and somebody says that the drug for tuberculosis was discovered by a Jew, so it's a Jewish medicine, then he's putting bondages. Then others will be not interested to accept it. We know that science doesn't belong to anybody. It has nothing to do with any race, color, religion, sect, nationality, etc. Electricity is just electricity. Medical science is just medical science. Engineering science or mathematics is just mathematics. It has nothing to do with any sect or religion. This is a coincidence that the inventor of the gravitation was a Christian. This is just a coincidence. The law of gravitation has nothing to do with Christianity. If we take similarly the science of yoga, I would like to call it the science of the soul, the science of the consciousness. It has nothing to do with Hinduism or our country India or our race of Aryas. It has nothing to do with, it is just a coincidence that Lord Shiva or Maharshi Patanjali were born in this country. This is a coincidence. But what they have discovered is something for the whole humanity. So let us drop these labels. Then yoga can really become global. Otherwise, people hesitate to accept it. So let us declare that yoga has nothing to do with religion. It may have been discovered by a Hindu, but yoga itself is not Hindu. It has nothing to do with any sect, race, or nationality. It is not part of geography. Then it cannot remain limited. From local, it becomes global. And particularly the modern man, almost 50% of the world population is atheists now. If we want to spread the science of consciousness, the yoga, we have to include those people who do not believe in God. And I would like to mention you, in Yoga Sutra, Maharshi Patanjali has mentioned that God is just a hypothesis. Some people can practice surrendering to God also as a help in yoga. Remember, also, he has used this word. God can be used as a help too. It's not essential. It is not essential, please remember. But some people who believe in God, they can use that hypothesis to surrender, to get rid of the ego. That is the main thing. You can get rid of ego by other means too. God is not essential. This way, we can open the door of yoga to theists as well as atheists. And as education is progressing, scientific thinking is spreading all over the world, more and more people are becoming atheists. In future, probably, most of the educated people will become atheists. They will deny God. But this has nothing to do with yoga. The value of yoga will remain the same. It does not need any prerequisite, any belief, any trust. It is as scientific and technical as any other sciences. The word yoga is very similar to prayog, experiment we use for science. Yoga is also a prayog, an experiment which you do inside. Your consciousness is the laboratory. Anybody can do it. No blind belief is needed. And I say that better if you do not have any blind beliefs, then it is much easier to do the experiment. So even God is not needed for yoga. Yoga in itself is enough. It is just like to use the electricity, you do not have to believe in any theory. Electricity is self-evident in itself. Anybody can use it. Whether he is from Australia or Africa or Asia, doesn't matter. The medicine which cures malaria can be used by black, by the white, by the man, by the woman, doesn't matter at all. The medicine works. Similarly, yoga works for everyone. So let us make this very, very clear. Second point I would like to mention, and that is Patanjali started his Yoga Sutra with the highest Samadhi path. He divided Yoga Sutra in 4 chapters and starts with the highest peak. Unfortunately, All over the world, people are teaching yoga. Many people are learning yoga, but they are starting from the lowest. This is something wrong. That's why I would like to talk today about heights of yoga, not the basics of yoga. People have become very intelligent. They can find out about it on internet, from YouTube, from so many sources. Let us give some glimpse of the highest. That will be attractive. If we talk about the lowest, then yoga appears like a kind of physiotherapy. The pranayam and asana may give good health, but remember, even if the whole world becomes healthy by using anipathy, do you think if everybody is healthy, then yoga will be useless? No. Yoga will be even more important, more significant. It is not a physiotherapy. It is not for physical health only. Yes, it is useful for physical health, but it is not limited to that only. It is something spiritual. So please do not make it popular as a physiotherapy. Otherwise, it will become part of the hospital. It will not remain part of the temple. But Patanjali has introduced yoga. He starts from Samadhi Pad. Samadhi means the trance state, the ecstatic state of super consciousness. And in the very first sutra, he defines yoga as cessation of the mind activity. Chitta vritti nirodh, where the thinking, imagining, memories, visualizations, feelings, emotions, all the activities of mind have come to the end. The cessation of the mind is yoga. This is the highest definition. This is the highest goal we have to look for. So don't make it very limited to the asana and pranayam only. They are good, but not enough. Good health is good in itself, but it is not enough. We need something more. So let yoga remain associated with the highest peak of spiritualism. And that happens when the mind stops. You are still aware. Patanjali has divided yoga in 8 limbs. The first 5 steps or limbs are called Bahiranga Yoga, outer forms of yoga. These are the peripheries. These are the steps to climb the ladder which reaches to the temple of divinity. And the real temple is 3 inner steps, 3 inner limbs called dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. Contemplation, meditation, and beyond. The supreme ecstasy. That is the real temple. So we have to understand this very much. The peripheral part and central part of yoga. What is happening in the world today? The peripheral part has become popular and the real temple is just forgotten. People do not even mention about it. The heights are forgotten. The peak of the Himalaya, the Everest, is forgotten. If we want to make yoga, the science of consciousness, really global, we have to make it clear what are the heights. What is the supreme target? Of course, we will use the steps to reach there, but that is secondary. There are some very courageous people, they can take direct jump too. The steps are not necessary, not essential. Gautam Buddha did not use those steps. Mahavira did not use those steps. There are so many people in the world who became enlightened, fully awakened, self-realized, without using the 5 steps. The Lao Tzu and Chuang Tzu in China, they had never heard about these steps of yoga. The Pythagoras, Heraclitus in Europe, they have not even heard the name of yoga, but they have reached to the supreme ecstatic state of samadhi. So please be clear, the 5 steps are not essential part of yoga. They can be used for those who are not very courageous. They can go step by step. Step is also a small jump. Those who are really courageous, they can take a big jump, enter directly into the dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about dharana, dhyan, samadhi. Dharana means contemplation, concentration, focusing. Normally, our mind is diverted in different directions. Unless it comes in one direction, single targeted, we cannot transcend the mind. So before the mind stops, we have to stop it from wavering in different directions. Let it become non-wavering. As asana is defined as sthiram sukham asanam, the most comfortable still posture, that is at the level of the body. Similarly, dharana is at the level of the mind. No more waves, no more multi-directional movement, one direction, dharana, focus on one object. This is dharana. There are different meanings of dharana too. Dharana also means dharan karne ki kshamta. Just like a woman becomes pregnant, if we are using dharana, we can become pregnant with the divinity. That capacity arises in us. After dharana comes dhyan. The flow of awareness which is connecting you from the object, that awareness, that is dhyan, attentiveness. This is the bridge between you and the object. You are the subject and there is object of dharana, the object of contemplation. What is the connection between the two? That is awareness. So we start from dharana, becoming focused. Next step is becoming aware of this awareness. Naturally, this awareness will be having 2 ends. One is the object, one is the subject. Just like 2 ends of a rod, 2 poles of a magnet. One inside the subjectivity and one outside the object. What is flowing in between? That is awareness, that is consciousness, attentiveness, whatever name you can give to it. That is dhyan. J. Krishnamurti used a term, and that is very significant. He uses the term double-arrowed consciousness. arrows on both sides. For example, if you are listening me, not only concentrate, focus what I'm saying. Remember who is listening. That listener is within you. I'm the speaker outside. The sound waves coming to your ear from outside. But there must be someone inside who is listening. Who is that? So when you become aware of both the music and the listener, the seen and seer, the observer and the observed, in simple terms, the object and subject both, this double-arrowed consciousness is called dhyan. Now, there can be different dimensions of dhyan. If we use the yogic terminology, we can use the first dimension is karma yoga. That means becoming aware of the bodily activities as well as who is aware of this. You are walking, the movements are happening in the body, but who is this who is watching the movements? That is your consciousness. If you are aware of both, this becomes karma yoga. This is connected with the Mooladhara chakra, the basic chakra. Connected with the second Swadhisthana chakra is Tantra yoga. This means becoming aware of all physical sense organs, their sensitivity. For example, we are aware of the light through the eyes, we are aware of the sounds through the ears, similarly all other 5 senses. Be aware of what information is coming from the sense organ and be aware of who is becoming aware of this. That is your subjectivity. When you are using this double-arrowed consciousness, this dimension of dhyan, this is called Tantra yoga. The third is Hatha yoga, particularly related with breathing process, pranayam. We can also call it this prana yoga, the inhalation and exhalation and different kinds of kumbhak, holding the breath. These techniques can be used for Hatha yoga. Again, remember, you don't have to become only aware of the breathing, but become aware of who is aware of the breathing. Simultaneously, breathing has become the object. Who is the subject? Only then it becomes Hatha yoga, prana yoga. If you are focusing only on breathing, not on yourself, then it is not part of yoga. It becomes yoga only when you do breathing with subjective awareness. Particularly, this can be felt with intensity during kumbhak. When you hold your breath for a few seconds inside or outside, antar kumbhak or bahir kumbhak, in that moment, nothing is happening. The air is not coming in, not going out. Everything has stopped. In those moments, the suggestion of mind happens very spontaneously. You don't have to force the kumbhak. Just let it be natural, spontaneous. Maybe a fraction of a second, and that is enough. That will give a glimpse of suggestion of mind. Not only breathing stops, the thinking process stops. All memories and imaginations come to an end. And for a fraction of a second, great peacefulness, blissfulness, A vast silence descends. This is the glimpse of meditation. The fourth dimension of dhyan is bhakti yoga, devotion, feeling, emotion, surrender, trust, as well as become aware of who is surrendering, who is devoted, who is praying. Only then bhakti becomes bhakti yoga. We can also call this para bhakti. If it is only prayer, only devotion, only kirtan, then it is Gaudiya bhakti. It's good to start with, but please do not end there. Go to the bhakti yoga, the para bhakti. You are dancing, doing kirtan, singing bhajan. Very good. Remember who is inside. The body is moving and dancing. Your throat is being used for singing, chanting mantra, or praying. But who is the one who is listening this? That is your consciousness. So this double-arrowed awareness, the Gaudiya Bhakti becomes Para Bhakti or Bhakti Yoga. This is related with Anahat Chakra. And the fifth is Vishuddha Chakra. Connected with Vishuddha Chakra is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means not to accumulate knowledge, but become aware of what has been already accumulated. The mind is full of thoughts and informations. Okay, become aware of it. The inner world of mind, the mental world becomes an object, and you remain the subject. Who is watching these thoughts? Let the thoughts move as if people are moving, the traffic is moving on the road, and you be a watcher, a witness. As you become more aware, more watchful, a moment comes, thoughts stop. Again, using this trick, the cessation of mind happens. This is the technique of Raj Yoga. Then we come to Raj Yoga, connected with the third eye or the sixth center, Agya Chakra. This is the center of willpower. Now, pure double-arrowed consciousness without selecting the object. Up to now, I have told about 5 yogas: Karma Yoga, Tantra Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. There was a particular object selected. The subject was same in all the 5 yogas, but the object was different. Either it was karma, or sensation, or breathing, or emotion, or thoughts. In 6th Raj Yoga, we do not select anything. This is non-selective awareness. Whatever is happening in the present moment, be aware of it. Simultaneously, be aware of who is aware. This becomes Raj Yoga. And then comes the final, related with crown center, Sahasrara Chakra. That is Sankhya Yoga. Now drop all techniques, drop all objects, just be aware. Objectless awareness. And from here we can take jump from meditation to samadhi. That is the final target to be achieved using any yoga, any dimension of meditation. Finally, we reach to samadhi. Samadhi means the duality has disappeared. The observer and observed, the knower and known are no more there. No object, no subject. Now something beyond, transcendental. And this cannot be described in words. So dharana and dhyan we can describe a little bit. But samadhi is something totally beyond. It is a state of no mind, no words, no language. There is no experiencer and nothing to experience. The duality has disappeared. This is the ultimate peak. This is the height of yoga. So I would like to remind everyone, please remember the highest peak of consciousness, the Everest, the Gauri Shankar, where we have to reach. Otherwise, we may be working in the dark valleys. We may forget about the sunlit peaks of Himalayas. Never do that mistake. Of course, those steps may be used. Most of you already know about them. Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar. If you want to use, you can use them as well. If you do not want to use, they are not essential, you can take a direct jump. Particularly, I am mentioning this as in today's world, people do not have much time. If we insist that you have to practice this particular posture, it may take months or years, particularly in the Western world. In the cold countries, people have been using chairs for sitting since generations. In cold countries, you cannot sit on the floor. In tropical climates in our country, for example, it is perfectly comfortable to sit on posture, to sit on the floor. So our ancestors have been using Padmasana, Sukhasana very easily. From generation to generation, the genetic transmission happens, and somehow our bones and muscles have become accustomed to it. But when a Western person comes to learn yoga, it may take years for him just to sit in a proper posture. By the time he learns asana, he will become fed up because he has not got any glimpse of meditation, no glimpse of ecstasy. He may drop practice after a few months of practicing asana. He will think this is too difficult. Oh my God, I cannot do it. It is not necessary. You can sit in an easy posture. You can use your easy chair. You can sit in your ordinary chair, no problem. The body has to be comfortable and still. That is the only thing. Sthiram sukham asanam. No special posture is needed. And similarly, pranayam also, you have to find out your own breathing rhythm, which gives you glimpse of meditativeness. As our fingerprints are different, every individual has a special rhythm, and he has to discover that rhythm himself or herself. It is okay to understand what are the different kinds of pranayama and learn few things for a few days. Don't waste much time in it. Finally, you have to find out your own rhythm, which may be a little different from the standard teachings. And that rhythm You have to discover, and once discovered, you will suddenly feel a click. Something from unknown is descending. So please remember the heights of yoga, and these will be very, very useful for modern man. And if we make this target very clear, the essential as essential, and mention non-essential as non-essential, if you enjoy, you can practice, but they're not necessary. Only then the science of samadhi, the yoga, can become universal, otherwise not. Thank you very much. Jai Osho.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत मेरा सभी लोगों का नमन है आपके लिए स्वामी जी।